Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today is March 10th, 2025. And, looking at all the headlines coming out of India today, it really feels like a nation that's constantly changing. I mean, we have wins on the sports field, big moments for Indian culture and arts, important changes to policies, and, of course, some pretty big developments in the business world.
It's really remarkable when you take a step back and you see the sheer breadth of the news. It really is like a microcosm of India, juggling so many different things at the same time. It's kind of like the country itself.
It really is. And speaking of things happening at the same time, let's start with one that's got everyone talking. India just won the 2025 Champions Trophy. It's a massive victory for Indian cricket. And I think it's safe to say that Rohit Sharma really earned that Player of the Match award.
Yeah, no question. I mean, his performance in the final was just incredible, and it was his leadership throughout the whole tournament that really helped get them there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's definitely a moment of huge celebration for cricket fans all over India. But like we often see in the world of sports, there's a little bit of drama unfolding behind the scenes. What caught my attention was the absence of any representatives from the Pakistan Cricket Board at the closing ceremony.
Yeah, that's right. And to make things a little bit more interesting, all three of the officials handing over the trophy were Indian. Now, it's important to remember that Pakistan was actually the official host of the tournament.
Exactly. And that's where things get a little bit complicated. The ICC, the International Cricket Council, their official statement was that no one from the PCB was available. But of course, India's matches were actually held in Dubai.
Right, because of those ongoing security concerns.
Exactly. And the PCB, it seems they have a slightly different perspective on this whole situation. I mean, they were the hosts after all. And there are reports saying that Faisal Hasnain, their CEO, was actually in Dubai at the time. But he didn't show up to the ceremony.
And we also know that Mohsin Naqvi, the PCB chairman, had other commitments. He's got a pretty important government role as well. So it does make you wonder if there's a little more to this story than meets the eye. It's not just a scheduling conflict, right?
Right. And the PCB has already mentioned they plan to talk to the ICC about what they're calling a miscommunication.
Mm-hmm.
You have to imagine how it looks from their point of view. The winning team's board is there front and center. And the host board is nowhere to be seen.
It does make you think about those power dynamics within the ICC. And you can't ignore the political sensitivities that come into play when you're talking about India and Pakistan on the international stage. It's always more than just a game, isn't it? It's about national pride and international relations.
It definitely is. Now, on a brighter note, and sticking with the world of cricket, Rohit Sharma has announced that he doesn't have any plans to retire from ODI cricket anytime soon. In fact, he's even got his sights set on the 2027 World Cup.
Yeah, that's big news. It's really significant for Indian cricket. When a player of his caliber makes a long-term commitment like that, it says a lot. And of course, he's also aiming to match MS Dhoni's record of 3 ICC trophies as captain.
Dhoni's legacy in India is pretty hard to overstate. I mean, it's almost legendary at this point. So for Sharma to say he wants to equal that record, I think it speaks volumes about his drive.
It absolutely does. Now, there's always talk about the futures of other senior players like Kohli, Jadeja, and Shami. But this clear statement from Sharma brings some much-needed stability to the ODI team. It gives them a sense of direction.
And he's been very smart about it. He's emphasized that he's taking a step-by-step approach, focusing on his fitness and taking things one game at a time, which makes sense because the 2027 World Cup, which, by the way, is going to be co-hosted by South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, is still a while away.
That's right. And I think that focus on his fitness is key. It's a really mature outlook, especially at this point in his career.
And he specifically mentioned Dhoni's captaincy record as a goal. It shows you that for a lot of these top athletes, their legacy is really important to them. It's not just about winning individual matches.
It's about their place in history, writing their names in the record books, and doing it alongside those iconic figures.
It's pretty fascinating. It makes you wonder, what is it that keeps these elite athletes going, pushing their boundaries year after year?
I think it's a lot of different things. I mean, it's the love for the game, for sure, the passion for the sport, and the desire to constantly improve to be the best they can be. But it's also the recognition that comes with it and the thrill of competition, especially at that level. For someone like Rohit, who's already achieved so much, you can see that drive to solidify his place in cricketing history. It's a powerful motivator.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit from the cricket pitch to the world of Bollywood. Laapataa Ladies, the movie that was India's entry for the Oscars under the title Lost Ladies, didn't get nominated. I imagine there might be a few disappointed fans out there.
Well, yeah, an Oscar nomination would have been amazing for Indian cinema. It would have been a great recognition on a global scale. But we can't overlook the success that the film has had at the IIFA Awards. I mean, 10 awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Kiran Rao. That's huge. It's a major accomplishment for the Indian film industry.
10 awards is incredible. And the film itself, it's a really interesting story about two brides who accidentally get swapped on a train. But it also touches on some pretty important social issues, doesn't it? Like the role of women in society and the challenges they face.
It does. And that's what makes its success at the IFA even more significant. I mean, it's engaging with those big societal themes in a way that's accessible to a wider audience. And Karen Rao has talked about how proud she is of the film and how it's been received.
The IIFA ceremony itself sounded pretty incredible. It was held in Jaipur, and all the big names were there. Shah Rukh Khan, Shahid Kapoor, Karan Johar, Kartik Aaryan. I mean, the whole who's who of Bollywood.
It really shows you the power and influence of Indian cinema, not just in India itself, but globally as well.
So even though it missed out on an Oscar nomination, Laapataa Ladies has really made its mark. What do you think this contrast tells us about how recognition in the arts works?
Well, I think it shows that recognition can come from different places and that those different places value different things. The Oscars are one specific measure of success, but the IFAs tell us something different. They tell us about a film's impact within India itself. And Laapataa Ladies' success there shows that it's connected with audiences and that it's making a real contribution to Indian cinema.
Now let's turn to something a bit more serious and potentially controversial. There are proposed changes to anti-conversion laws in Madhya Pradesh, and there's been some discussion about potentially adding the death penalty for what they're calling forced religious conversions. I mean, understandable Christian leaders are pretty worried about this.
Yeah, no doubt. The fact that they're even talking about capital punishment for what they deem as fraudulent conversions is very concerning. I mean, it raises some serious questions about basic human rights and especially religious freedom. You can definitely understand why Christian leaders are worried about the potential for increased persecution. I mean, we've seen how similar laws have been used in other states, haven't we?
We have, and it's really important to keep in mind that in Madhya Pradesh, Christians are a very small minority, less than 1% of the population. And there's already a pretty hefty penalty in place, up to 10 years in prison. So to even consider adding the death penalty to that is a really big deal.
It is. And if you look at the bigger picture across India, there's been this trend of states enacting these anti-conversion laws, and they've disproportionately been used against religious minorities. We've seen arrests and sometimes even violence as a result of these laws.
It's a tough situation because the Indian Constitution does guarantee the freedom to practice and promote your religion. But the way these laws are being used in practice, it seems like they're actually going against that very principle.
And it's not just happening in Madhya Pradesh. The Supreme Court is looking into the constitutionality of these laws nationwide. So it's clearly a hot topic, and there's a lot of debate about it. I mean, you have the states saying they want to prevent forced conversions, but then you have individuals who should have the right to choose their own faith and practice it freely. So how do you balance those two things? It's a tough question.
It really is. And then you have the whole issue of defining what forced or fraudulent conversion even means. I mean, there's a real risk that a law like this with such a severe penalty could be misused. It could end up being used to target people simply because of their religion rather than any actual evidence of coercion. It's a very sensitive area with the potential for a lot of injustice.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on to the business world, there's a big name we need to talk about. Mukesh Ambani. His consumer-facing businesses are reportedly facing some challenges. Part of it seems to be increased competition from American companies, but there's also the issue of potential changes to U.S. trade policy, especially with the possible return of the Trump administration.
Yeah, that's right. It could have a big impact on his position in India's consumer market.
It definitely could. Ambani's got big plans to really solidify his hold on the Indian consumer base. We're talking about a market of over 1.4 billion people. It's huge. But these external pressures are making things more complicated. There's talk of renewed trade tensions with the U.S. They could go beyond just tariffs. And that creates a lot of uncertainty for Ambani's investments, especially in the consumer sector.
And if you remember, former President Trump was always talking about how American companies weren't doing enough business in India. It does make you think that if he were to come back into power, he might take a more aggressive stance on trade.
And that's a concern for India as a whole. I mean, even a business empire as big and diverse as Reliance Industries is not completely immune to these global shifts. When the relationship between two major economies like the US and India changes, it can have a ripple effect. Supply chains can be disrupted, investment flows can be affected, and it can really shake market confidence. It's a delicate balancing act for Ambani. He's got these big goals domestically, but he's also got to navigate these tricky international waters. The stakes are high.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears again to the pharmaceutical industry. Sun Pharma, a major player in the Indian drug market, just announced they're buying a U.S.-based oncology company called Checkpoint Therapeutics. The deal is worth $355 million. It seems like the main goal here is to boost their cancer treatment portfolio.
Yeah, it's a very strategic move by Sun Pharma. It's a clear sign that they're trying to really strengthen their presence in the specialty pharmaceutical sector and particularly in the area of oncology. Checkpoint Therapeutics is listed on NASDAQ, and they specialize in immunotherapy and targeted oncology treatments.
And I understand that their most valuable asset is a drug called UNLOXCYT. It's already been approved by the FDA for advanced skin cancer. So that gives Sun Pharma an immediate entry into a very important part of the oncology market.
It does. And it also gives them access to Checkpoint's pipeline, which includes other promising cancer treatment candidates. And of course, for Checkpoint's shareholders, this upfront cash offer is a big win. It's a great return on their investment. And there's an added layer of complexity and potential benefit because Sun Pharma has also agreed to pay royalties to Fortress Biotech on future sales of another one of Checkpoint's drugs called cosibelimab.
The leadership from both companies seem pretty happy about this deal. Dilip Shanghvi, Sun Pharma's managing director, talked about how this will combine UNLOXCYT with their global reach. And James Oliviero, Checkpoint's CEO, highlighted the value for their stockholders and the potential to get their treatments to more patients.
It's a win-win situation for both companies. And it's part of a larger trend that we're seeing where big Indian pharmaceutical companies are looking to acquire companies in developed markets. It's all about expanding their specialized drug portfolios and getting access to the most advanced treatments.
What do you think this trend tells us about the state of the Indian pharmaceutical industry?
It's a sign that the industry is maturing. They're not just focused on generic drugs anymore. They want to compete in the global market for branded and specialized pharmaceuticals. They're investing more in R&D and becoming more innovative.
Very interesting. All right, let's switch gears once more to the mountains, in fact. The Khelo India Winter Games are underway, and it looks like athletes from Himachal Pradesh are doing exceptionally well, especially in ski mountaineering.
It's great to see. They're really showcasing the talent that India has in winter sports. Tenzin Doma won the gold medal, and Natasha Mehar took the silver in the women's ski mountaineering vertical race. It's a big achievement for them, and it shows just how dedicated and skilled they are. It's always inspiring to see athletes like this excelling.
And Himachal Pradesh as a whole has already won 4 medals in just 2 days of competition. The Indian Army team, the defending champions, are also performing well, and Karnataka's Pavani Thakata won gold in Nordic skiing. The Khelo India Games are important, aren't they? They help to promote a wider range of sports in India.
They're vital. These games give athletes from all over the country a chance to compete in sports that don't always get the same level of attention as cricket. And it encourages young people to get involved in different kinds of sports, especially in those regions where winter sports are a natural fit. These games really do play a role in elevating the profile and participation in these sports in India.
Okay, now we're going to shift our focus to a state that's been dealing with some complicated consequences of a social policy, Bihar, where the prohibition on alcohol has been in place for almost 10 years. It's been in the news lately because it seems to have created a pretty big black market, and there are concerns about some unintended negative outcomes.
This is a great example of what can happen when well-intentioned social policies have unforeseen consequences. The idea behind the alcohol ban in Bihar was to tackle domestic violence. And there's some evidence to suggest that it has helped reduce public drunkenness and alcohol-related abuse.
But on the other hand, there's been a surge in the production of illegal alcohol, which is often dangerous and even deadly. And the authorities have had to pour a lot of resources into trying to control this black market. There's a lot of policing and surveillance going on. Even drones are being used.
It's created a lot of work for law enforcement. And the unintended consequence is that it's actually fueled the growth of organized crime and corruption. They've created these lucrative opportunities for illegal networks. And while the goal was to get rid of alcohol, it seems like they've mostly driven it underground, which is even more dangerous because now you have this unregulated liquor that can be very harmful.
It's a very complex situation. And with elections coming up, there's a lot of debate about whether this policy has been effective and what changes might need to be made.
It raises the question of how far the government should go in trying to control social behavior. I mean, banning something outright can sometimes backfire and create more problems than it solves. It makes you think about the balance between state intervention and personal freedom. And how do you address these complex social issues in a way that's effective and ethical?
It's a great question. All right, let's move on to something with a more optimistic outlook. India's artificial intelligence sector. It's expected to create a whopping 2.3 million jobs by 2027. That sounds pretty incredible, especially given all the talk about AI taking away jobs.
It is an optimistic forecast, but there's some solid research behind it. A study by Bain and Company highlights how fast the AI sector is growing in India and how much demand there is for skilled workers in this field. The challenge, though, is going to be reskilling the workforce. It's estimated that more than 1 million workers are going to need to learn new skills so that they can move into these new AI-related roles.
It's a big task, but the potential is there. And there's one potential roadblock we need to discuss. The projected talent pool of AI professionals in India is only about 1.2 million. So even with all these new jobs being created, there could be a huge shortage of qualified people.
That's right. That skills gap is already being felt by businesses all over India. A lot of executives are saying that they don't have enough in-house AI expertise, and it's making it hard for them to implement AI solutions. The demand for AI skills has skyrocketed in recent years, and so has the pay for those who have these skills.
It sounds like India has the potential to become a major player in the AI world. But in order to do that, they're going to have to find a way to quickly and effectively bridge this skills gap. What do you think will happen if they don't? What are the implications of this talent shortage, not just for India's economy, but for the whole AI landscape?
Well, if India doesn't address this skills gap, they're going to miss out on a lot of economic opportunities. It could really limit their growth. And on a global scale, if there aren't enough skilled AI professionals, it could slow down innovation in every industry that relies on AI. But if they can get it right, if they can successfully reskill their workforce, then India could become a major source of AI talent for the whole world.
Okay, now let's talk about a story that has international implications. Lalit Modi, the controversial former head of the Indian Premier League, has had his citizenship revoked by Vanuatu. This all stems from that corruption case he's facing in India. It's been a long and complicated story.
It has. Lalit Modi has been living in the UK since 2010, trying to avoid those legal issues in India, and then he managed to get citizenship in Vanuatu. But now the Prime Minister of Vanuatu, Jothamina Pat, has revoked his citizenship. He's even come out and said that citizenship is a privilege, not a way to avoid extradition. So it's pretty clear why they made this decision.
It is. And here's an interesting twist. It seems that Vanuatu initially did their background checks on Modi, and they didn't find any criminal convictions. But then they discovered that Interpol had twice rejected India's request to issue a red corner notice for Modi because they said there wasn't enough evidence.
Yeah, that was a key factor. Even though Modi had met the initial requirements for citizenship, this revelation about Interpol's decision must have raised some red flags for the government of Vanuatu. And for India, this is probably seen as a step in the right direction. Vanuatu doesn't have an extradition treaty with India, so this makes it more likely that Modi will eventually have to face those charges.
As you can imagine, Modi has publicly denied all the accusations against him. He's even said that the media is trying to smear his reputation. It's a case with a very long history, especially considering his role in creating the IPL, which is now a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
It really shows how complicated international law can be. The fact that Interpol rejected India's request twice suggests that there might be different legal standards or that India didn't provide enough evidence to meet those standards. Modi's case is a good example of how people who are trying to avoid prosecution in their home country can exploit those differences in international law.
And lastly, let's look at a project that's trying to address a very pressing issue: extreme heat. The city of Ahmedabad is testing out these reflective white roofs on 400 homes. It's part of a global research project. It's a really practical approach, isn't it?
It is. They're called cool roofs. And the idea is that by painting roofs white with these special reflective coatings, you can reduce the temperature inside the building. It's a pretty simple concept, but it could have a big impact, especially in developing countries where access to air conditioning is limited.
They're using a pigment called titanium dioxide, which reflects a lot of the sun's radiation. So instead of the roof absorbing the heat and transferring it into the building, it's reflected back into the atmosphere.
Right. And they're already seeing some promising results. One resident in Ahmedabad said that her home felt noticeably cooler and her electricity bills went down. I mean, that's a real tangible benefit.
Absolutely, especially
Right.
for those who can't afford expensive cooling systems.
And it's not just about comfort, it's about health, too. A similar study was done in Burkina Faso, and they found that these cool roofs not only lowered the temperature, but also reduced people's heart rates during the hottest parts of the day. So it's not just about making people feel more comfortable, it's about potentially saving lives.
This research is being led by Aditi Bunker, an epidemiologist, and it's funded by the Wellcome Trust in the UK. They're going to be collecting data over an entire year in several different locations: Burkina Faso, Mexico, Niue, and of course, Ahmedabad. It'll be really interesting to see what they find out.
It will, and it's really important that they're testing this in different climates because that will give them a much better understanding of how effective cool roofs are in various conditions.
And with climate change causing more frequent and intense heat waves, it could be a really valuable solution for people who live in hotter regions all around the world.
I agree, especially for those who are most vulnerable to extreme heat, like those who live in informal settlements or poorly insulated housing. It's a relatively simple solution, but it could have a big impact on public health, and it's a great example of sustainable design. If this research shows that it's truly effective, then it could lead to widespread adoption of cool roofs all over the world.
Wow, we really covered a lot of ground today.
Right.
From sports triumphs to social policy to technological advancements, it seems like there's no shortage of interesting stories coming out of India. It's such a dynamic and multifaceted country. What do you think?
I think it's clear that India is going through a period of immense change and growth, and it's facing all these different challenges and opportunities at the same time. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the coming years.
It certainly will. And on that note, here's something for all of you listening to think about. We spent some time talking about the proposed anti-conversion laws and the concerns about religious freedom. So here's the question. How can we strike a balance between the state's desire to prevent forced conversions and the individual's right to choose their own religion? How do we create a society that upholds those fundamental freedoms while protecting the rights of minority groups? It's not an easy question, but it's an important one.
It is, and I think it's something we all need to think about, not just in India, but around the world. These are complex issues, but it's crucial that we understand them and engage with them in a thoughtful and informed way.
Couldn't agree more. We hope that this deep dive has given you some new insights and maybe inspired you to learn more about these issues. We encourage you to keep exploring and stay curious, and we'll be back soon with another deep dive into the stories that are shaping our world.